They walked into a busy restaurant, two small girls with big eyes and a quiet request. "We'd like to work for one plate of food." The owner laughed at first. But what he discovered next would shatter everything he thought he knew about. Struggle, dignity, and family. What happened in the next few minutes would change 4 lives forever. And it all started with a simple notebook. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The lunch crowd at the Maple Spoon was louder than usual. Forks clinked, laughter echoed off the windows, and waiters weaved through tables like dancers in a hurry. Outside, the sky hung low and gray, promising rain, but inside, the restaurant was alive with warmth and noise. No one noticed the 2 small figures standing just outside the front door. Not until they pushed it open and stepped inside, holding hands tightly. They were twins, maybe 9 years old, with matching backpacks and quiet determination in their eyes. Their coats were too big, their shoes scuffed, but their hair was neatly braided, and their faces were clean. Melina, the head waitress, spotted them first. She paused, unsure. Kids wandered in sometimes, lost or looking for a bathroom. But these 2 didn't look lost. They looked like they meant business. "Hi there," Melina said, stepping closer with a kind smile. "Are you looking for someone?" The taller twin, Linnea, nodded. "We need to speak with Mr. Callum Reed, please." Melina blinked. "Callum? The owner? Are you sure?" "Yes, Jory," the other twin added. "We have a job interview." Melina looked around, half expecting someone to jump out with a hidden camera. "A job interview?" "Yes, ma'am," Linnea said. "We brought our resume." Jory pulled out a small notebook and held it close to her chest like it was gold. Before Melina could figure out what to say, a deep voice came from behind her. "What's going on?" Callum Reed stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Tall and broad-shouldered, he looked more like a man who could fix your roof than run a restaurant. His face was serious, his eyes sharp. Melina turned toward him. "These 2 girls say they're here to interview for a job." Callum raised an eyebrow and looked down at the twins. They stared back up at him, unblinking. "You've got my attention," he said, folding his arms. "You've got 2 minutes. Talk." Linnea took a breath and stood straighter. "We would like to work here, sir. We're good at cleaning, organizing, and helping. We don't want money. We just want 1 meal a day. That's all." Callum frowned. "You want to work for food?" "Yes," Jory said softly. 1 plate each, nothing more." The restaurant noise faded in Callum's ears. For a second, all he could hear was the ticking of the clock above the bar. He stared at the 2 girls, searching their faces. They weren't joking, and they weren't begging. They were asking politely for the chance to work for their food. Callum scratched his chin. "Come with me." He turned and walked toward the back office. Melina looked surprised, but the twins followed without hesitation. Inside, Callum's office smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. The girls sat on the edge of the couch, feet swinging just above the floor. Callum took his seat behind the desk. "So, tell me why you're really here." Linnea opened the notebook. Inside were scribbled lists, food budgets, and simple math equations. She pointed to a list labeled, "What we have left." It read, $4.36, 2 cans of beans, 1 slice of bread. "Our mom is sick," Linnea said. "She's in the hospital." "She's been there for 6 days, Jory added. "We've been walking to school and coming back by ourselves. Mrs. McKinney from next door checks in sometimes, but she doesn't have much either." Callum leaned back, stunned. "Does your mom know you're here?" The twins shook their heads. "She wouldn't want us to ask for help," Linnea said. "But she always says work is better than asking for a handout." Callum ran a hand through his hair. Part of him wanted to say no right away, to call social services or the police. But another part, the part he didn't show often, remembered being 9 years old. Hungry and too proud to ask for help. "What's your mother's name?" he asked. "Marin Claire," Jory said. "She used to be a cook. Before she got sick." Callum sat in silence for a long time. The twins didn't fidget. They waited. Finally he stood up. "Okay," he said. "First, we're going to visit your mom." The twins looked at each other, unsure. And then, Callum said, his voice softer now, "We'll figure out a way to help. The right way." As they walked out of the office together, the restaurant buzzed with noise again. But in Callum's chest, something had shifted. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Callum drove in silence. The twins sat quietly in the back seat, their small hands folded in their laps. Linnea looked out the window, while Jory clutched the little notebook they'd shown him earlier. The city passed by in soft gray and brown tones, the clouds heavy with rain. They pulled up to Haven General Hospital, a building that looked tired and overworked, like it had seen too many bad days and not enough good ones. Callum got out and opened the door for the girls. Linnea nodded in thanks. Jory gave him a quick smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Which room?" Callum asked gently as they stepped into the main lobby. "Third floor," Linnea said. "Room 312. As they walked through the quiet hallways, nurses bustled past with clipboards and carts. The twins led the way like they had done it many times before. Callum couldn't stop watching them, how steady they were, how they didn't cry or complain. It made his chest ache in a strange, unfamiliar way. When they reached the room, Linnea knocked softly. "Mama?" she said. A voice came from inside. Tired but warm. "Come in, sweethearts." They pushed the door open. Marin Claire was propped up on a hospital bed, her hair pulled into a loose braid, face pale but still graceful. When she saw the twins, her eyes lit up. "Oh, my girls." They rushed to her side, each grabbing a hand. Callum stood near the door, unsure of what to say or do. Marin noticed him and frowned. "Who's this?" she asked gently, her eyes shifting between her daughters and the stranger in her doorway. Linnea looked up. "This is Mar Callum. He owns the Maple Spoon." Jory added, "We asked him for a job." Marin's face turned red with worry. "Girls, we talked about this. You can't just ask strangers for work, Mr. Callum. I'm so sorry. They didn't mean any harm." Callum stepped forward. "They didn't harm anything," he said. "They came into my restaurant today with more bravery and purpose than most adults I've met." Marin tried to sit up straighter but winced. "They shouldn't have done that. They're just kids." "They said you've been here 6 days, Callum said. "Who's been looking after them?" "We do it ourselves," Jory answered. "Mama taught us how. We pack our own lunches and do our homework. We even set alarms to wake up on time." Marin looked down at her daughters, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and pain. "I didn't want them to carry so much." Callum pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "You've raised them well. They're strong. And they weren't asking for charity. They wanted to earn their food." Marin's eyes shimmered. "We ran out of groceries 2 days ago. I didn't know how long I'd be here. I told them not to ask for help." "But we didn't ask for help," Linnea whispered. "We offered to work." Callum glanced at the notebook still in Jory's hands. "Can I see that again?" She handed it over, and he flipped through the pages. Simple math, grocery lists, meal plans. There were notes like, "Stretch the peanut butter and save 2 crackers for lunch." One page just said, "Don't tell Mama we're worried." Callum felt a lump in his throat. "You did all this on your own?" he asked. Both. Girls nodded. Marin closed her eyes for a moment, swallowing hard. "I used to work full-time at a diner, but they don't offer benefits. When I got pneumonia, I couldn't afford the medicine. I waited too long to see a doctor. Now here we are." Callum looked at her, really looked at her. She was clearly exhausted, but there was still fire in her voice. This was a woman who had done everything she could. Even if it hadn't been enough. Your daughter saved you more than you know, he said quietly. Marin opened her eyes. I'm sorry if they caused any trouble. They didn't, he said. They reminded me what courage looks like. Silence settled in the room, gentle and full. I'd like to help, Callum continued. Not just today. I have an apartment. Above the restaurant. It's safe, warm. The girls can stay there while you recover. Marin blinked. I can't accept that. They'll be close by. They already want to help organize the kitchen, he added with a small smile. And they'll be around food. Marin gave a weak laugh. They'll like that part. You don't owe me anything, Callum said. You already did the hard part. You raised them to be brave. Marin looked over at Linnea and Jory, then back at him. Just until I get better? Just until then, he promised. As the sun began to set outside the hospital room, something changed, not in the world, but in the people inside that small space. A door had opened between three strangers, and what stepped through wasn't charity or duty. It was the beginning of something that felt a lot like family. The apartment above the Maple Spoon had been empty for years. Once, it was where Callum lived when the restaurant was just a dream. Now dust covered the windowsills, and silence hung in the air like an old curtain. That silence broke the moment. Linnea and Jory stepped inside. Whoa, Jory whispered, dropping her backpack near the door. This place is huge. And it has a kitchen, Linnea added, running her fingers across the counter. Mama would love this. Callum watched from the hallway, leaning against the doorframe. It's not fancy, he said, but it's clean and safe. The fridge is stocked. You've got fresh sheets and towels. And Melina will check on you after school until I get back from visiting your mom. The twins nodded, still exploring. Jory opened a drawer and found silverware. We can cook here, she said excitedly. Callum smiled. It was the first time since meeting them that he saw them act like children, curious, playful, full of wonder. That night, after they had dinner together in the apartment, Linnea pulled out her notebook. We made a chore list, she said, holding it up. If we're going to stay here, we want to help. Callum took the notebook, flipping through the pages. There were drawings, checklists, and even a schedule. It was detailed, organized, and color-coded. This is impressive, he said. We don't want to be a burden, Jory added quietly. You're not, he replied. You're part of the place now. The next morning, Melina arrived early to walk the girls to school. She brought them muffins wrapped in napkins and 2 small lunch boxes shaped like ladybugs. After they left, Callum stood in the empty apartment and felt something strange. Not the loneliness he'd grown used to, but a kind of fullness. The walls didn't echo like they used to. Something had changed. Later that week, back at the restaurant, things began to shift in ways Callum didn't expect. Have you noticed the girls reorganized the napkin station? Asked Annika, the kitchen manager. I can actually find things now, Emery, the quiet dishwasher, added. They helped me label the spice jars yesterday. I didn't even ask. Even customers noticed. Your staff seems happier, one regular said. And those little signs on the tables? Adorable. That's Jory's doing, Callum replied. She said the tables needed more charm. Every day, Linnea and Jory came by after school. They finished homework in the corner booth, and then offered to help. They wiped down menus, refilled salt shakers, and even folded napkins into animal shapes. Idle hands make trouble, Linnea said one afternoon. Mama always says that, Callum laughed. Your mama's right. At night, he visited Marin. At the hospital, she was getting stronger but still tired. Their talks grew longer and more personal. You didn't have to take them in, Marin said during one visit. I know, Callum replied. But they've done more for me than I have for them. Marin looked at him, her eyes soft. You've given them more than a roof. You've given them a reason to feel safe again. Callum didn't know how to answer that. Instead, he brought updates from the restaurant. Linnea organized the entire stockroom yesterday, he said. I couldn't find the olive oil, but she made a map, Marin laughed. Sounds like her. Jory probably added flowers to the freezer. She did, he admitted, and labeled the ice cubes frost gems. Their laughter filled the room, light and easy. A few days later, Callum was checking receipts when he heard a familiar voice at the front door. Mr. Callum, look what we made. It was Linnea, holding up a poster titled Customer Kindness Rules. Beside her, Jory held a tray of tiny drawings meant to be given to customers. Their little thank you cards. She explained. People like feeling seeing. Double quotes. Callum knelt down to their level. You two are something special. They beamed. That night, after dinner, Linnea asked him a question that stopped him cold. Do you have any family, Mr. Callum? He shook his head. Not anymore. That must be lonely, Jory said, not unkindly. Families are better when they're bigger. Callum looked at them, then down at the table. He cleared his throat. Yeah, he said softly, they are. After the girls had gone to bed, he sat on the balcony alone, watching the street. Below, the city lights flickered, the sounds of life continued, but his thoughts were elsewhere. These girls weren't just visitors anymore. They'd made themselves a part of the restaurant, the apartment, and his days. They had brought something into his life that he didn't know he was missing, and maybe, just maybe, they were here to stay. Rain fell softly on the windows of the maple spoon as Callum stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with slow, steady hands. The usual rhythm of the restaurant felt different, heavier, quieter. He knew something was wrong before anyone said it. It started with strange looks from staff, then whispers that stopped when he walked in. Finally, Melina came to him, her eyes serious. You need to see this, she said, handing him a tablet. Callum took it and read the headline. Restaurant owner accused of exploiting children for free labor. Underneath, a blurry photo of Linnea and Jory folding napkins by the front counter. His heart dropped. The article painted him as a rich man using poor kids for sympathy. It said he was taking advantage of a struggling mother. It even suggested he was using his restaurant to gain attention, not help. Who would do this? He asked. Melina looked at him. Kellen's been asking questions. He didn't look happy about the girls staying here. Callum set down the tablet. His hands were shaking. That afternoon, Kellen stormed into the restaurant, loud and angry. This has gone far enough, he snapped. We're losing customers, Callum. Investors are pulling out. And for what? 2 kids and a woman you barely know? Callum stepped forward. You think this is about charity? I think it's about you losing your mind, Kellen said. You let them live upstairs. You let them work here. And now we're all paying the price. They're not working, Callum said through clenched teeth. They're helping. And they're part of this place now. Kellen laughed coldly. You're being played. You don't even see it. Unnoticed, Linnea and Jory stood in the hallway, hearing every word. Their faces pale, their hands clenched tight. Come on, Linnea whispered to her sister. We shouldn't be here. They ran upstairs, tears stinging their eyes. When Callum returned to the apartment later that evening, it was quiet. Too quiet. The girls were packing. What are you doing? He asked. Mama always says if someone doesn't want you, don't stay where you're not welcome, Linnea said, stuffing clothes into her backpack. You heard that? Callum asked, his voice soft. We heard enough, Jory whispered. We're sorry we messed everything up. Callum knelt beside them. You didn't mess up anything. I'm the one who should be sorry. The door creaked open, and Marin stepped inside. She had just been discharged that morning. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. I saw the news, she said quietly. And I heard about the argument. Maybe it's better if we go, Callum stood. Don't. Marin folded her arms. I don't want to be a burden, not to you. Not to your business. You're not, he said. This place was just a restaurant before you came. Now it feels like something more. Something real. She looked at him unsure. You told me once that you believe in honest work, he said. Well, I believe in honest people. And I won't let lies tear this apart. The next morning, Callum held a meeting with his staff. I know some of you are worried, he said. But everything in that article was twisted. He explained everything, the girl's situation, their mother's illness, the reason he offered them the apartment. He told the truth, plain and clear. Melina stepped forward. I believe him. Those girls have only brought good to this place. Annika nodded. Customers smile more. The place feels warm. Emery, who rarely spoke, raised a hand. Callum's the reason I didn't quit last year. He saw me when no one else did. Now he's doing the same for them. One by one, the staff backed him, but Callum knew it wasn't enough. The story was still out there. The damage was done, until Claire, a local reporter who had once visited the Maple Spoon, called him. I want to tell the real story, she said. No rumors, just truth. So Callum agreed to an interview. The next day, Claire sat in the restaurant with Callum, Marin, and the twins. She asked questions. She listened, she took notes. And 2 days later, her article appeared. How two brave sisters and a lonely chef built something stronger than business family. The piece was honest and kind. It told the world who Linnea and Jory were. It praised Marin's strength. And it showed Callum not as a man with money, but as a man with heart. The community responded. Customers returned. Regulars brought flowers. Parents asked if their kids could help fold napkins. Investors called back, even those who had walked away. And Kellen? He left town quietly, after it came out that he had leaked the story to hurt Callum's image and gain control of the restaurant. One evening, as the sun set outside the apartment window, Linnea sat on the couch drawing with Jory. Callum looked over from the kitchen. Hey, he said. What are you two working on now? A sign, Jory said proudly, for the front door. She held it up. It read, this place feeds more than just stomachs. It feeds hearts. Marin smiled from across the room. And for the first time in years, Callum didn't feel like he was running a restaurant. He felt like he was home.